Should Christian Encarnacion-Strand be counted on to be the Reds' opening day first baseman? Well, we're going to tell you on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, his name is Steve Offenbaker, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. And we are glad that you are making us part of your day, making Locked On Reds your first listen every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And Steve and I have been hosting this podcast for a couple of years now, and we have a combined almost 14 years of experience podcasting about these Cincinnati Reds, as we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. And we're glad that you're alongside us here today as we talk about CES this last year. Not so good. Dealt with injury after dealing with ineffectiveness. So what do we expect from him? Is it fair to hand him the first base job right from the get-go? We'll discuss that here coming up in just a moment. We also want to jump into, if that's not the case, who could the Reds go get off the free agent list? Because there are a couple of options. And later on in the show, Ty France, where's he to fit into all of this? We're going to tell you on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to save $20 off your first order. What time is it? It's game time. With the struggle that CES had in 2024, coming into the season, it was clear he is the first baseman of the future for the Cincinnati Reds. But does that mean that he is the first baseman of 2025? I would tend to lean yes, but I don't know that I'm married to that idea.
Well, I think the way that he's performed out in Arizona has gone a long way into easing people's minds about him being the opening day first baseman. I think that he's looked comfortable. He's had good at bats, and I know it's young minor league players, young minor league pitchers. He should be hitting them. I'm not necessarily talking about the results that he's had. I'm talking about the way he looked. I'm talking about the feedback that the coaches are giving. That his wrist is not causing him any undue problems. His at-bats have looked good. So I think you can go into the beginning, at least into spring training, telling yourself that this job is CES's to lose. Now, if they keep somebody around, we're going to talk about Ty France later. If there's somebody that takes it away from him, so be it. If he needs a little extra time to get major league ready and you've got to start somebody else, Jeimer Candelario is a man without a position right now. So, there may be a guy to play first base. And if they go get those two outfielders that we're saying they need, could be Spencer Steer over at first base. So there are options if CES needs more time. But I think heading into Goodyear anyway, you can look at him as first baseman number one, top of the pecking order.
I think it's interesting because in typical situations where you're talking about professional environments, not even just baseball, but professional environments as a whole, when you've got a guy, you got an employee that you're not exactly sure is going to do the job the best, but they have the potential to do the job the best, I think you do have to ride or die with that guy. There's a bit of this where I would like the Reds to hedge their bets, but I think they might have already done that with Jeimer Candelario. But with CES, I think that I'm willing to accept, willing to believe that one of the biggest reasons he struggled so mightily last year was because he had dealt with the injury basically since the word go. We saw early on the first couple of games, it seemed like he had his power and then it disappeared. So maybe there was something there early on that he was able to play through, and then it just got to be too much for him. And David Bell, of course, said some of my favorite words of the season. Oh, it's been ligament damage all along. So, yeah, all right, all along, sure, he dealt with that. But then does that mean we know who he is? Because out in Arizona Fall League, he is alleviating some concerns, but we do have to remember the pitching quality that he is facing is nowhere near the level that he will be facing on an everyday basis next year.
Yeah, I'm more worried about just how he feels. I don't care what the results are on the field in Arizona right now. But I think It's again about resource allocation, right? We want
Yeah.
them to get two outfielders. We want them to get a starting pitcher. We've talked about maybe upgrading the bullpen. There's not going to be money to go get another first baseman. And we're going to talk about a little bit later. I don't even know that they can afford to keep the ones that they've got. So
Mm.
I think by default, you have to look at this as being CES's job. And maybe you create a rotation over there with Jamer, with Spencer Steer, utilizing the DH position and the first base position to rotate those three guys through, depending on if we get those two outfielders or not. It's a good problem to have if they get those two outfielders because Spencer Steer is probably the best first baseman on this team. And then you can use CES a lot more at the DH position.
I do find it intriguing because thinking about the idea of if the Reds were to get another outfielder, adding Spencer Steer to that mix, it's interesting to see what the Reds got out of their first base position last year. And of course, a lot of this was weighed down by the really rough start that CES had to the season. But relative to every other position on the field, and I say on the field, I'm going to discount DH, the Reds had a horrible year from anybody that was labeled the DH. Whoever it was. So Baseball Reference, just to kind of give you a little bit of background on what I'm talking about here. OPS plus is a statistic we love to use when we're talking about hitting. Baseball Reference even breaks it down. The OPS plus that a player had relative to the rest of the league, where does it rank? Where 100 is the rest of the league's production, and where the player is the number. The Reds' first base position compared to the rest of the league was 27% below league average. 73
Ooh.
collectively for everybody that played first base. So that's talking about all the production that the Reds got from guys like Spencer Steer, Jamie Candelario, Ty France. You put them all together, it was super subpar. So we're talking about a position that was a huge hole for the Reds last year.
Yeah, it's got to be better. CES has got to be better. And I think he will be. I think that what we saw was largely a product of him playing with all this ligament damage that still boggles my mind that nobody knew about that.
Right.
That
Like if
they
he had it,
missed
I'm
It
just put it back out in the ether. Like if he had it all along, why was he playing? Whatever.
well, hopefully that problem is rectified in the off season as well, because one thing's for sure, Jeff, if the Reds are going to have a successful 2025, based on those numbers you just talked about, they're going to have to be way better than 27% below league average at the first base position. But listen, there's a lot of available first basemen on the market. The Reds could go make a move. And I think I probably poo-pooed it to death already there in the first segment, but we're going to talk about it a little more coming up here in just a minute if the Reds should go get somebody or not.
You can get a big return this NFL season over on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same place where you place your bets over at FanDuel. And plus, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet, i.e., you don't even have to win. You place a $5 bet, you get $200 in bonus bets. The World Series is set, and look, regardless of how much we all hate the Dodgers and the Yankees, I think we can all agree that we're, seeing Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge in the World Series is objectively cool. With that, FanDuel has interesting odds set on the World Series going to 7 games. Right now, it's at plus 190. So wagering $10 would get you $19 if the World Series did, in fact, go to 7 games. And look, I want more baseball, so yes, I want that to happen. Let's go over 6.5 games. That's over on FanDuel.com.
We're talking Reds baseball here today and every day, every week, every month, all year long. Make sure you are subscribed and click the notification bell and the like button and the audio feeds, all the things. Make sure you're listening because we want you to get 30 minutes at least of Red Sox every day from us because we love talking Reds baseball with you. All right, Jeff. Now, there are some first basemen that are going to be available out there. And I guess this is probably more of a pipe dream than anything else. But should the Reds go get somebody to hedge their bets? And for me, the answer is no. The the resources need to be allocated elsewhere.
Well, and maybe, so we were talking about this a couple of days ago. We mentioned the Reds' need for an outfielder. And if you wanted to have a perfect offseason, maybe you go get two outfielders. But maybe the second outfielder is a first baseman. Hear me out. You go get Santander. You bring him in. You put him in the outfield. And then you commit
Yes.
to making sure Spencer Steer doesn't have to move around a bunch. I know he wants to do that, but let's see what happens when he plays an entire year at one position. Maybe he does go crazy. Maybe he takes that step forward that we could see him taking if you just say, Spence, you're a left fielder. Go out there and be a left fielder. That's who you are for the rest of the year. I would find that intriguing, and I think the best way you could possibly do that outside of just going and getting two outfielders is that you go out and you sign Christian Walker. Because you get Christian Walker, you take a lot of pressure off of CES, and you take a lot of pressure off the lineup. Christian Walker is the kind of guy that you could slot into the middle of this order. And I kind of mentioned maybe not even as a passive need for the Reds would be to have a cleanup hitter. Dude slugged 468 last year, and for his career, he's got a 463 slugging percentage and an OPS plus of 114. He's an RBI machine and the kind of guy that you would feel good about having in the middle of your order. Then you could put Santander third. You could put him fifth. You could put Tyler Stevenson sixth. You could put him third. You could put Matt McClain third. You could put him sixth or seventh or something like that. I feel like if you have a guy like Christian Walker in the middle of your order, and then CES can kind of get back to being CES at his own speed, you could even start him off in AAA and really let him ease into it. I don't know. I think that it's easy to say, well, obviously, no, you don't need to go get a first baseman. But I think if you were to flesh out the idea, it could work and it could really help out this team.
I would rather that they take what you're talking about spending for Walker, put that into the second outfielder. That moves Spencer Steer. Now you're doing Spear, Candelario, CES, rotating through first base DH. That solves all the problems. Walker feels very luxury purchase. That's like the unnecessary thing that I really want, even though I don't necessarily need it. So that's
Right.
what that feels like to me, Jeff. I mean, I think CS is going to be fine. I think he's going to answer a lot of these questions early on in spring training, and he's going to be all right.
I do think it's interesting too. There's an element of, can we just bring disgust and hatred into the hearts of Cardinals fans and go get Paul Goldschmidt?
Oh my.
That would be a hilarious luxury to have on this team for sure. But those are the two guys that I'd be looking at.
Actually, I know you said that. I know you said that tongue in cheek, but it would have Scott Rowland vibes, right? Goldschmidt probably has another year in the tank. Probably does,
especially as a DH for most of the time.
Yeah, as a DH, and just kind of let him go out there and rake a little bit at Great American Ballpark. I don't know. That could be fun.
I think that's something that is a little bit underrated, where obviously the outfield should be the focus. The Reds' production that they got out of first base and DH was not what you would expect. There was no power. There was no threat. There was no middle of the order guy that you're just like, this guy is going to take over and be that guy that the opposing pitchers fear. The Reds were really deficient in both areas. And as much as the Reds use the designated hitter position as more of a pseudo off day to take somebody out of the field, there was just no production whatsoever from anybody that played the DH spot. So maybe you kind of re-look at that with Terry Francona until maybe Terry looks at that and he's just like, I don't know, do we use the DH that way, or do we have a guy who is the DH? That'll be a little bit interesting to see if he just continues what the regime was doing under David Bell, or if he changes that a little bit.
No, that's going to get changed. I think everything's going to get changed. Francona's going to do things the way that has been successful for him, and I think we'll see the DH position settle a little bit. It won't just be one guy playing DH, but it's going to be much more. I think there will be a steady rotation of two or three guys, and that's just the way that's going to be the DH.
I wonder too what third base plays as far as a role in who's playing first base, because as much as I think we're leaning more optimistic with CES, I think we're leaning more pessimistic with Noelvi Marte. I think
He has to start the season in AAA. He
Yeah.
has to be in AAA.
So then you're talking about Candelario at third. You're talking about, is Spencer Steer going to play third? Is there going to be a move? They said that they're not moving Elly. Does Matt McLain play third? Like, how does that affect the first base equation? Because CES also came up as a bit of a first base, third base type hybrid player.
And I know this. I don't want to see Jonathan India over there. I really don't
Yeah.
want to see Matt McLain over there, but for them to publicly say they told Elly he's the shortstop, they're going to hold to that. So
Yeah.
I think those are our options, India or McLain.
This is 1,000% off topic and probably more of an idea for another episode, so I don't want to really get into a discussion about it just yet, but put this in your mind. Did they guarantee Elly shortstop to make it easier to sign him long term?
Stop it. Scott Boras has said that long-term deals
I know
never
what he
benefit
said.
the player.
I don't know. I'm looking.
How would
I'm
you
looking,
feel
but-
about Spencer? How would you feel about putting Spencer Steer back at third base?
I think I feel better about him on the infield than I do in the outfield. I just really think there were a couple of plays that I saw him make that stick in the back of my mind where he really tried. He really tried to gun a guy down. And it just didn't work. He is a relay guy. You need to make sure that he hits the cutoff man, because when he doesn't, people advance, period. There's no, you're not worried about Spencer Steer's arm in left field, which probably doesn't bode well for third base either, but I think I like him more in the infield than I like him in the outfield.
Because we could do a scenario where CES is your first baseman predominantly. Spencer Steer's third base, Elly's at short, India's at second with Matt McLain rotating. Candelario's rotating first base, third base. Spencer Steer's your third baseman. That gets all the bats in the lineup, and that's a pretty good infield.
You would definitely have to sign that second outfielder, though. Like, I don't want that to be
sure.
Jake Fraley that takes over in left field every day. But that is a conversation for an episode that we actually had 2 days ago. So make sure you go check that one out. Not going to rehash that. We said a lot of good stuff back then. That was on Tuesday. But let's move forward with this, because, all right, we've said a lot of things about CES, about Jeimer Candelario, Spencer Steer, about Mr. Outside Hire. Why hasn't Ty France been in this discussion? It's pretty simple, and we'll tell you why coming up next. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. No matter where you're going, no matter what event you're going to, they've got great sports game tickets, whether you're going to, playoff games or football games, even basketball getting started up and things like that. Plus, you can go see shows. You can go see like a comedy event or even a concert or something like that. Game Time has tickets to everything. And just like with Reds games, like Steve and I tell you all the time, the longer you wait toward the beginning of the event, the better the price is going to be, because they've got last minute deals on all of your favorite tickets. You can download the Game Time app today and create an account and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Again, you create the account on FanDuel, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off that first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. If you can't watch us on YouTube, you can always catch us on audio, because we're literally on every audio podcasting platform out there. Go subscribe today, and make sure you click the like button and the subscribe button, all that good stuff here on YouTube. All right, Steve, we have talked a lot about first base, and we haven't mentioned Ty France, except maybe in passing a couple of times. And that's because, based on some numbers that we're seeing from Spot Track and from MLB trade rumors, his arbitration total could touch $9 million for next year. And I couldn't be any less interested in that than I am right now. Don't want to see him be a $9 million man for this Reds team next year.
Yeah, and I don't want him to gamble at paying that and trying to trade him. I think you non-tender Ty France. You know, he was useful. He had some good moments. He was an extra base machine for a while there. But, you know, I just finished telling you how crowded the infield can be if everybody's healthy. They're going to be struggling to get everybody in that is long-term future of this team. There's just not – you're not going to be able to work Ty France into that rotation. And $8 or $9 million. Now this is where the ridiculous argument that you had for Santiago Espinal actually does apply, in that you could spend that money better elsewhere. Because Ty France would be a back of the bench kind of guy that's going to be struggling for playing time. You can get that dude for much cheaper.
If you even could get Jacob Junis to pick up his side of the mutual option, that's $8 million. So you're literally, that $8 million just kind of gets absorbed, and then you got more money to spend on free agency. I looked at this, and when you kind of do some maths, and there's a great MLB trade rumors article out there. It was written by actually a guy named Anthony Franco over at MLB Trade Rumors. But he had mentioned that if you non-tender Ty France and Santiago Espinal, the Reds' payroll number is somewhere around $60 million before you start signing free agents and making trades and making acquisitions. So I think it's a no-brainer that Ty France is non-tendered here, because I feel like he was a not necessarily a panic move, but it was, we don't have a lot of depth. There's a lot of guys hurt. That was after Jay Candelario went on the injured list. CES.
Yeah, it was an emergency move, not a panic move, but an emergency move.
So don't make a $9 million add-on to this emergency move. The Mariners were looking to get rid of him anyway, and he was actually better as a Mariner last year. He had a 97 OPS plus as a Mariner. He had an 85 OPS plus as a Red. So again, this is the idea of, like, Ty France had some memories. He had some long balls, things like that. He was not consistently a good performer. In fact, according to Baseball Reference, he was minus 0.6 WAR, and Fangraphs had a minus 0.9. So he was almost a full win worse than anyone else out there. So as much as he was an emergency move, the numbers say you could have done another emergency move on top of that, and it might have been better.
I feel like I could provide -1 WAR. I think I could get that done.
Yeah. Because, I mean, France was not good defensively. He was very, very bad defensively.
No.
So
well, he can't turn his head, Jeff. I mean, what do you want from the guy? He can't.
At least I can turn my head. I can do that. No, I'm just kidding. Ty France is a professional. I am not a professional. But that being said, there are still plenty of other options out there, even in system, for the Reds, that they're now healthy. They're going to be ready to go. CES is showing that out in Arizona. Jeremy Candelario will be ready to go in spring training and stuff like that. I think that maybe an earmark going and getting Ty France if he's available for an emergency move before opening day. But God help us if that's where the Reds are come that point in time. But yeah, I think it's pretty elementary.
And what we haven't talked about, just to briefly mention, you and I stayed way far away from speculating about Matt McLain when he was out of the lineup out in Arizona, and he's been back in the lineup. So yeah, we're cool. We're good.
I almost wonder if there's a little bit, speaking about the Matt McLain in Arizona thing, I wonder if there's a little bit of just making sure his time is limited, whether he's feeling good or not. Just being like, look, there's not a huge value to you playing every other day out in Arizona just to show us that you're healthy. Just be healthy and play like 1 or 2 times a week. That's
right.
All
just work on your baseball things, carry it into the off season, have some fun on the same team with your brother, and be healthy heading into be healthy heading into February. That's what we need from him.
I like that they both got to play. They both started and played the game the other day. I think, was it Sean McLean was at second base and Matt McLean was at third base or something? It was something like that. Or
something like
maybe
that.
I got those flipped. But that was pretty cool. And Arizona Fall League is for the prospects that are still trying to show their stuff, show their value to the team. CES and Matt McLean are out there to prove that they're healthy. And fingers crossed, knock on wood, they're doing that. And hopefully they continue to do that and they're ready to go for a good year, because that's really all this is about for those guys.
And that is where we're going to wrap it up for today. Thanks so much for making Locked On Reds your first listen of the day. Everydayers, coming up, we're going to continue to cover this team and kind of look back on 2024 while we also continue to look forward to 2025. Now that you've made us your first listen, go check out the Locked On MLB podcast. Paul Francis Sullivan, you can call him Sully, has you covered over there with all of the World Series action. He brings his unique sense of humor. It's very unique. He's a funny guy, but a lot of baseball knowledge there as well. We've made it easy for you. The link for that show down in the description of our show. You don't even have to search for it. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And with that being said, Jeff, get us out of here.
You can trust that every single day we're going to be all over the rumors. We're going to be all over the news. Who's going to be the next hitting coach and other assistant coaches under Terry Francona, and what's going to be the first move that the Reds make, because they need to be busy this offseason. And we're going to be here covering it every single day because we are Locked On Reds every single day.
Your athleticism consists of you being able to turn your head. I love it.
I mean, you got to start somewhere.